Hello everybody and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching nearly 1,000 comedians and counting over the last 46 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, the fantastic Miss Stevie Martin. Yay!
Thank you.
Hello!
Excellent welcome and correct.
How are you? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you, Richard. Yes, I'm good. I must apologise if in the background you hear scratching sounds. It's not a ghost, it's my tortoise. And she's in a run behind me and she's climbing up a brick. So, yeah.
That's lovely. When I was very small, we used to have a tortoise called Plug. We called him Plug because when you lifted him up, he used to wee everywhere.
Oh, excellent. Well, ours is called an Alison, so it's much more straightforward. Much more straightforward.
Anyway, thank you so much for doing this. We're going to chat about your comic career for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And I'd like to kick off by asking you, you're an actor, a writer and a podcaster. How did you become a comedian in the first place?
Well, I went to uni at Durham and they have quite that at the time, and they still do. They have a very good student comedy scene. And so the current Durham Review, they're called, not the current one, the one that was kind of running when I was there was Nish Kumar, Ed Gamble and Tom Neenan. Wow. And a wonderful woman called Katie Barker, and then a man called Pete, who I've forgotten his last name. He was brilliant too. But obviously 3 of those have gone on to be comedians, and I auditioned for them. So I actually auditioned for like Ed Gamble, me and Ed Gamble were just in a room and I had to it was really scary, and I only did it because my friend got me drunk and said, "Oh, you told that funny story about a hat that one time." And I was like, "I can't, I'm going to be a writer. What are you talking about?" And I was so nervous and I felt so silly, but I was like, "I'm at uni, why not?" And then I got in, and then I literally did not speak for 2 years. I was so frightened of being in that group. I was just like, "It's a joke. If you want to be, you don't have to take it." And it was me and my friend Liz. We were the 2 girls in it. And at that time, it was very much like, even when I was writing sketches, I would write sketches where I would just come in and go, "What? Okay," and then leave. I wasn't giving all the great monologues to the guys, and it was very much like, a lot of them went on to work in the industry, and they still do now, but it was just not a thing that I thought I did. It's not like I thought, "Oh, I can't do it." I just was just like, well, that's absurd. Yeah. So I did an MA in journalism and became a journalist, and was a journalist for about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
In that time, me and Liz, who I was in the review with, and a girl called Tessa, who was in the year below, but also in the Durham Review as well, who we auditioned in, we sort of became pals, and we were just sort of fed up, really fed up. And I was a comedy reviewer for a while. Right. I edited this magazine called Fest in Edinburgh.
I know it well, yeah.
And so, I was in the very much the dark side. And then I went to see this group called Birthday Girls, who are a really great sketch group, who are still going.
We've had Rose Johnson on here. She's wonderful.
She was at my house last night. We got very drunk. She's great. And I saw them do a show, and I was just and there was 3 girls, and I was like, it was so stupid because it was I think it was mid-2011, and it kind of a light went in my head. I was like, "Oh, you can be a girl sketch group. What the fuck?" And so then I literally went outside and called Liz and was like, I've just seen a sketch group and they were so fun, and we could do that. We could have fun. Do you remember when we used to write sketches and stuff? But it would be we'd have the lines too. And so Tessa got involved, and then we were in a sketch group, and I did it alongside my journalism career for a long time. And then when it sort of started to balance, started to tip, I started doing solo stuff, and now I'm not a journalist. Now I am a comedian/writer, I would say. Yes.
That's excellent. That's really good. It's funny you mention Ed Gamble, because I see Ed Gamble a lot at Always Be Comedy, and the man always takes the mickey out of me sitting on the front row laughing at him. But what a great comedian.
He's wonderful.
Oh, he is. He's brilliant. Similar to me, I went on a writing course for my blog, and just for a half day, and they said to me, we forget why you're here. Can you remind me? And I said, well, you invited me, and I said everybody around me wants to be a reviewer, but I don't class myself as a reviewer. I think I'm an enthuse for the comedians that go on there. Whenever I go to a comedy night, I always just have such a good time, and I'm so enthused for the idea. So I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a critique, I'm not a reporter, I'm not a diarist. I'm a member of the audience out to have a good time, and they never bothered me again. so you've got my utmost support in everything you do, because I've enjoyed you so much when I've watched you live, and I think it's wonderful. Can you tell me more precisely about your first ever gig, and what was it like?
Oh my God. The first ever one, proper one, professional one, not at uni, because obviously, that doesn't really count, does it? The first one was, I'm not going to say who it was and what the night was, but it was in a pub in Kentish Town, and we'd never done a gig as Massive Dad before. This is my sketch group, was called Massive Dad. And we'd brought scripts, and we were so nervous. I was shaking, we tried to cancel a few times, and we were just so nervous. And we got there, and it was a nice little crowd, and it was very tables, people sitting around drinking and kind of watching. It wasn't like a theatre, so it was quite nice, quite casual. But the MC introduced us, and I'm not lying. He introduced us like this. So next up, we have 3 women. Okay.
No.
Okay. And he went, I think they work for the BBC. We didn't. And went, all right, well, let's see how this goes. It was so weird, because it sounds like I'm making it sounds like I'm making it up. And we kind of were like, oh, do we come up now? Okay. And we did it, and it went very well. We were very pleased with it, because it was our first one. And so some of the jokes worked, despite us holding paper like this. And then afterwards he went, they're actually quite funny.
Oh,
well,
no.
and he went, well, women can be doing comedy these days, but not in Dubai, because it's illegal. And we were like,
unbelievable.
What's he talking about? And then he said something incredibly racist about Jewish people, and then we left. But that was our first kind of introduction to comedy, and it's only in the last few years that I realised that we didn't gig very much. We would do our own nights, and we didn't really think about it. And it's because our first experiences of gigging were quite bad. But now I do gigs, and now when you kind of get older and you realise, you pick the gigs that other comedians go, oh, that's a really good one. You don't just do literally anything because you've seen that they have a gig and they've got a little sandwich board outside. You've got to go. So it's always be comedy. It's an excellent night, always good, and everyone there is friendly, and and the audience is good, and also you just know it's going to be a useful night for you as well. People aren't going to laugh at everything, but you get a good sense of what you're doing. There's loads of really nice nights like that, but now I've started to only 7 years later, I've started to kind of realise gigging is actually good. It's a good thing to do. It's not always weird men going, you're a woman, that doesn't happen.
Well, I think to start off with, that is disgraceful. I mean, if you're funny, you're funny. It doesn't matter whether you're a man, a woman, or whatever. If you're unique and you're original with your material, then you deserve everything that every success, but I also think that you're right. I think that it all boils down to experience, and a lot of comedians have told me this. It doesn't matter whether you have a good or a bad gig. You should learn something from all of them and take it away, and then you can improve on it, and it does. I think I mean, I'm a classic example for an audience member. It's very, very rare that I sit in silence.
I'm the same. I laugh loads. When I go to Edinburgh and I go and watch shows, people like there's been 2 times where someone's looked around and gone like, "Are you all right?" Like, it's a comedy night. I'm laughing.
Yeah. It's exactly that. There's a famous story where I was at Headliners and I was watching Ricky Grover, and there was a heckler in the front row being really horrible and really nasty, and he stopped the show, jumped down, threw him out, and then came back on to the Rocky theme tune because he was an ex-boxer.
That was very good. That's very good.
Everybody jumped up and gave him a round, and of course the rest of his gig was fantastic. So it should all be positive. We're not there to see the audience. We're there to see the comedians doing their best, and they always do. You know my support for them will never diminish. You know, because it's such a great positive thing to do anyway, you know. So please keep doing it.
I will.
Thank you. Before you go on stage, do you suffer from any nerves at all? And if so, how do you cope with them?
Imagine if I said no. I'm absolutely fine. No, of course, yes, I do. And also I think because I didn't come up on the circuit like a lot of stand-ups, it means that I didn't gig as much. So I'm still probably at a level where lots of people are when they're, you know, like you get, the more you do anything, the easier it gets, and you get to like manage the nerves and stuff. And I'm at the stage where I think I can manage the nerves sometimes, but that because I used to be sick. I used to like,
wow.
Yeah, I couldn't eat for like 2 days before. And this is just like a 10-minute slot where I was doing material that I knew was fine. Like that's that level. Now, but I haven't done live for a long time. So I'm doing some shows in July and I'm quite scared. But I think it's now more excitement because I think that the thing that pushed me into a different sort of headspace was when I realized when stuff goes wrong, it's fine and you can make it funny. Yeah. I didn't trust myself that if I lost a line or like I had in my first show, I had an end joke where like the entire set around me just collapsed. And then when I got to Edinburgh, there was a door where if an audience member went to the toilet and they came back in at that point, they'd die. So a bookshelf would fall off. So there was so many instances where I'd be like, and then I'd go to, and then someone would like come back in after having gone to the toilet. I'd be like, no! And I was like, at the time, I'd leave being like, oh, I went off script and I didn't. But then I realized like that was the best bits of the show where like, you know, I'd be like, oh, you don't want to go to the loo now because I can't tell you. Or I would come out and the entire set would collapse in the first moment. And I'd be like, but that's the end joke. And then the audience would find that so funny. So then at the end, when it did happen, I was like, and that's where it's meant to fucking happen. And I realized like, it took me a long time to realize that it's kind of okay. And the moment you realize that it's okay, whatever happens, okay, of course you might do a set and no one will laugh. And someone might go, what? Which has happened once as well. A woman went, what? Oh, no. And then another time a woman went, oh, God.
No.
I did say the word arsehole, and then some people don't like that. They don't like to be reminded that they've got one. But yeah, so I found that, of course, you can have the gigs where it doesn't really work out and the audience don't really get it or whatever. But I've had enough of those where I feel like, okay, well, that's you. Yeah. You didn't get me. That's okay. But I know that some people do. And it takes a long time to build up enough nice gigs,
right.
and also to see that your material works enough to be confident enough to go, oh, I think you just didn't like that rather than that was bad. It takes a long time, and I'm sort of there, but I'm much better now when something goes wrong. So I think that just helps me be a little bit less nervous. I get more excited now and more, you know, like. There's a footballer, Virgil van Dijk, who said when you go, like he manages nerves by basically turning all of the symptoms of fear and going like, I'm excited and prepared. And I was like, yeah, that's what it feels like. You've got a shaky
Yeah.
And you say, so you can take the sweating palms and go, oh my God, I'm gonna screw this up. Or you can be like, my body is readying itself. Let's do this. So I go out just sweating, like, oh! Yeah.
It's interesting because other than this blog, for me, the most creative thing I've ever done is I wrote and appeared in a play, which originally was going to be for the Edinburgh Fringe. It was a half-hour play, and myself and my friend put it on for comic relief. And it's basically, in a nutshell, it's called The Applicant, and it's basically about me coming down from my home city of Carlisle to London, and I've got a very successful girlfriend, but I've never had a job interview, so I go for a number of job interviews, and each scene is in the waiting room, and then the interview, waiting room interview, and because I'm on my own, I just start talking to the audience and build up the monologue. As the story goes on, there's a lot of plot. He gets his favourite job, and just as he gets given his job, he dies. The interviewer kills him, and in the last scene, he's at the gates of heaven or hell, and he's being interviewed by God, saying, we've been watching you on planet Earth, and we think the ideal job for you is to interview corpses going into heaven. And I shrugged my shoulders.
So creative.
Now, when we rehearsed this for 10 weeks, and I wrote the thing, and when I ran out, we did 3 shows. When I ran out at the start, I had this 6-page monologue which I'd written, and I completely forgot it. And I was just blurting out words, and I was like a rabbit in headlights. Now, I think that's different because you're taking it from a script where you said you can make it funny, being a comic and spontaneity and all the rest of it. Do you agree with that?
I'm still very scripted, so I'm much more scripted than I try and show, because I think there are some comedians that can just riff and go, and I don't trust myself yet to do that. So everything that looks chilled and is still scripted, but I've had that exact thing with the sketch show that we used to do. I had a monologue at the start, and I came out and was like, I don't know it. I was like,
I've been there.
Oh shit! And I think from my perspective, I screwed it up because I was just like, I came out and was like, oh, I don't know it, and I was like, just imagine I said something about the weather.
Yeah.
I think you'll get the gist. And then I left, and then my other 2 sketch runners had to come out and do their sketch. And for me, from my perspective, I went backstage and I cried. I was like, I've ruined everything. But then obviously, then when I came out, all my friends were like, that was really funny. Like like, yes, you found it funny, but I wanted to die. So there's a misconception, I think, that like comedians can just like riff on anything. But inside, sometimes we're dying, and sometimes it's luck of the draw whether you've seen us maybe mess up and it's funny, and there's about 10 other times we've messed up and it's just not funny. Everyone's gone, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm screwed. Like in Edinburgh, I always have the first week in Edinburgh. Yeah. I basically always forget my lines, like every single show. I'll be like, and it'll be different points. I'm like, I can't even, and it's just nerves. Yeah. And so I had to write in something to my second show, so if I forgot a line, it became a joke later on. Right. So it was on purpose, because I was forgetting them so often. In reviews, they'd be like, yeah, she doesn't really know her lines. So it's like, oh no, it was only one time. But yes, sometimes you just go, oh, and I'd have to be like, Jake, to my tech. Be like, I'm sorry, I forgot. And I'd laugh, and the audience would be really nice. But you can't make that look professional. Like, you have just forgotten.
Well, it was interesting because I managed to get my favourite joke into the monologue. I called the character Norman Oliver Hope. So on the letters, it was Dear Mr. N.O. Hope, no hope. I thought that.
Yeah, it's lovely.
But I just blurted these words out, and then as soon as the other person came on the stage, we were riffing off each other and we were back in, and I never made the mistake again the next 2 nights.
That'll do it.
Mistake. So again, it is all experience.
Yes, I think, and having people with you as well is helpful to prompt you and give you a bit of confidence. Yeah.
Let's move on to Edinburgh properly. I am very fortunate to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I've been going since 2005. and I go for a week. It's my holiday. And I see about 50 shows, and I need a holiday by the time I'm coming back. I'm absolutely
I was going to say, that sounds exhausting.
But I cannot get enough of it. I absolutely love it. Can you tell me about your first Edinburgh festival and what it was like, please?
Well, I mean, the first one I was a reviewer and I slept in my friend's bath because I didn't have any money.
Nice.
Nice. And then I went with the Durham Review as well, which was, I can't really remember because I was drunk all the time, but like I was only 18, it's all right. But the first one I did was with my sketch group, and that was the first time that it was like, oh, this isn't like a fun jolly, like we're trying to get something out of this. And it was the first one where it felt very different. It wasn't just like, let's have a party and we've got a show on, fine, but we're going to have a great time. We had to kind of really, flyer and work. And there was a lot of like, suddenly it was like, oh, how many have we got in? I started to realize basically how hard it is. And then, so I've had lots of kind of firsts, obviously first reviewer one, first sketch show, proper show. And then the first solo show, it felt like I was doing it. That was in 2018, it was only a few years ago, but it felt like that was the first time I'd ever done it again, because I was on my own and there was no one to help me. And it was so much pressure. I felt a lot of pressure. There wasn't, this is just the normal pressure, but I felt so much pressure. And when you'd finish the show, I'd come off and be like, well, there's no one here to talk about it with me. So I just go and have some noodles by myself every day and go home. It's like, what are you doing? Live a little. By the end of it, I'd started to because I wasn't very, I didn't have loads of like comedy friends and stuff. And in that year, that was really nice because I started to meet people and be like, oh, other comedians aren't scary, because I'm really scared of comedians because I think they'll always be so funny in conversation that I won't be able to do anything. I'll be like, oh, we're all doing accents, are we? I can't do any. Or I was in jokes, and I'm quite boring in real life, so I don't really.
I don't believe that for a minute.
It is correct, but I feel like so I'd always stay away, and then in 2018 it was really nice. I met some people, some really lovely people, and then by the end of the month, I'd gone. I was told about a secret DJ gig all the comedians are at, so I went there. I'm there. I had a great time. So now it's a little bit easier. But yeah, I think each time I go to Edinburgh under a different guise, whether it's like a student, a reviewer, a sketch comedian, a solo comedian, it's completely different, but it's in the same old city that we both, I presume, love. Yeah. And feels really weird because I've got now so many, because I've been going since 2007. I've got so many memories that are just layered on, and I'm like a completely different person now to when I first went, but it feels the same every time the train pulls into Waverley. It's really just like,
exactly. As soon as you step off the train, the atmosphere hits you. It's
and even if I'm having a hard year, and it can be really brutal, but even then, like, I still always want to go back and like, because I'm going to go back in 2022. Like I want to have that year where I just have a show and I'm just having a nice time. The show doesn't have to be doing really well. I just have to. I want to enjoy the city again rather than being so bothered about ticket numbers and all of that.
Well, hopefully it will be back properly in 2022. I think
it might be.
I believe there's going to be some sort of online part live.
Yeah, but I'm not doing. That'll be all the famous people, I think.
And by God, I missed it last year. I really did.
Yes, I know. It was a bit. Well, I was very lucky since I was having a break last year, and then it was like, and I was like, oh, it's going to be so hard seeing everyone going up and no one went up. And I was like, actually, smashed it. I was smashed having a break. But it was very hard.
You have performed the solo shows Hot Content and Volume 1 at the Edinburgh Fringe, as well as part of the critically acclaimed sketch show, like you said, Massive Dad. Please let me know where you get your ideas from for your sketches and your shows. Do you have some sort of writing process, or do they just come naturally, or how does it work?
It's not really. Well, when it's a sketch show, you've got sketch group, you've got 3 people. So you basically, it's like, right, we've all got to bring ideas. So it's different each time. Someone will be like, I've literally got the idea of, like, I don't know, a goat. And you're like, what? But then someone else thankfully has come up with something better. So they're like, great, we could just work the goat in, or maybe just delete the goat and move on. So we can kind of, you've got like a team there. When it's just me, what I tend to do is the first thing I tend to do is I have to have a deadline. So it's like,
right.
if I know I'm writing a show in Edinburgh, we've got this nice, we just think we're going to start again in September, this nice night called the Night of Nights at the Bill Murray, where we do me and 5 other comedians do 10 minutes, and it has to be all new material. And it's great because some nights we all die, but it's funny because it's just like, the audience know what's happening. We're just like, we've got on my phone notes, we're just trying anything, and so sometimes it's brilliant. But what's nice is that if for example, if I have a terrible one, in 10 minutes time, my friend Dan Cook will do one and it'll be amazing. And then as we all kind of balance each other out, we never all die. And I think that's helpful because, for example, with 2022 Edinburgh, I know that I needed to get together 10 minutes, whatever, by whatever day it is in September. And so the first thing I do is I set a deadline of a small little bite-sized thing, not like an hour show, just like a little thing. And I just sit down and just try and think of, and I just brainstorm just anything. I have my phone notes as well, so whenever I think of something stupid or I say something, because it took me ages to do that thing where I think people think stand-up comedians are like, whenever they're telling a story, they're like, that's actually great material. I've never done it. And then my boyfriend, who's a comedian, was like, you should like write stuff down when you say things to friends and they all laugh. And I was like, yeah, but it feels very much like the things that you say in a bar would not work in a show. And he's like, and that's why you've got to try it. It's like, oh yes, of course. So I sort of go through my photos, and a lot of it is absolute dross or just weird words. The wood glue, what's that? Like a lot of that.
That's the magic of the actor. The originality is extraordinary.
I mean, wood glue. Who would have thought it? But I'll be like, what's that? But then some of them will be little paragraphs that I've written, sort of doing something or whatever, and I kind of go, I can see that's a joke, and then I'll write little 10 minutes, and then by the time you get 6 months in, hopefully the idea is I get enough sort of stuff, and a lot of it hasn't worked, and I record everything and then never listen to it because I can't hear my own voice, and then my director says, you've literally got to listen to it, that's the only way comics improve, and I say, shut up. It's so bad. I would be so much better if I listened to my own stuff, but I sort of remember the stuff that did well because I remember being excited that it did well in the room, and then I kind of go back and piece it together and try and make a narrative of it. And I think, and with this, I do online sketches as well, and with that's the same sort of thing. That's basically like if something just I was having a real problem with Hermes, the parcel tracker, and it was like, this would be a great sketch. Just someone trying to find their parcel. And that's more straightforward because I know what the format is. It's me and my friend Lola, and we cut together, and we'd kind of like she's always the annoying kind of the parcel person or whatever, and I'm always the person trying to get it done. And I write that, and it kind of, that's quite nice because you've got a little format. Yeah. And I think, so it's all different, but I think there's a misconception though, just like, I wake up at 9 a.m. and I just write comedy until 5 p.m. That literally doesn't happen. I wish it did so much, but the jokes and the ideas come when I'm like on a bus, on a way to see a friend, or back home having had 3 wines, or it's like 4 a.m. and I can't sleep, or so much I'm on the loo. Like so much stuff happens when I'm on the loo. And everyone's always like, I'm in the shower. And you're like, when I'm in the shower, I don't think of anything. It's loo time for me. That's my time. So I think it's different for everyone though, isn't it? As you must know, doing this podcast. Yeah,
it's interesting because the first year I went to Edinburgh, I knew the Free Fringe promoter there. At the time, and I said to him, can I have a go at doing stand-up comedy, please, just to get it out of my system? I was terrified.
Oh my gosh.
And he went, yeah. He said, we've got I've told a lot of comedians this story. He said we've got a gong show on at the Haymarket.
Oh no! Don't do a gong show.
It gets worse. On a Monday afternoon, and it's for old folk. So it couldn't be worse.
I wouldn't do that now, Richard. I wouldn't do that now.
So I went, yeah, all right, I'll do it. So I wrote this script out, and he liked it, and I walked out. There was 3 people in the audience, right?
Great.
And the time had started, and the first line I said was, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself." This was the ski jumper that was famous.
Yes.
And I thought that was a fail-safe because I was his double at college, you know. And this old bloke at the back just went, "Fuck off," and gonged me off straight away. So I walked off to my own footsteps, and the promoter went, "Have another go, have another go." So I did it again, same thing happened.
Oh my God, you did it again!
And I went, never say never again, but I think my rightful place is in the audience supporting everybody.
Yeah, never say never again, but I will never do that again. No, I know. The first time I ever did a solo thing was it was in 2017. I was in Edinburgh with my boyfriend who was doing a show, and I just was sort of there. I went to go and see loads of solo shows. I wanted to see like what people were doing and get a bit of confidence and a bit of inspiration. Just nick everyone's stuff. No, I'm joking. I'm very much joking. And then I found this gig. There was like this bus, it was like an old train or an old bus or something, and it was quite a way out. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I went on, and I had my friend who was going to direct my show the next year in the audience, and he'd seen Massive Dad, and he'd directed Massive Dad before and stuff. And I went out, and I did, I cannot tell you how frightened I was. I couldn't. My throat went like, it didn't just go dry, it constricted. Like I was like,
Wow.
I couldn't think. I was shaking like this. I had a little script. The guy who books quite a lot of gigs, has never booked me since, and I do not blame him. I think one joke worked in the 15 minutes, nothing else did.
Oh, no.
And when I came out, I was like, oh, and my director was like, I expected, because my thing is very much like, I always appear a bit more confident than I am. And so I was like, I guess I probably appeared fine, but I felt bad. And my director was like, no, I literally never seen a woman look more scared. He was like, no one could ever laugh at anything you did because you looked so horrified by everything you were saying. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. So, and that was like, I'd done loads of shows in a sketch group, and just on my own, I just couldn't do it. What I'm saying is, you're golden. Like, it's terrifying. But the difference is that like, I had nothing else, and you had probably a great job. So like, that's all I had. I had to do it.
You see, I find that staggering, because whenever I've seen you on stage, you do come across as exceptionally confident. Very
confident. I'm so not. But I've learned how to do all the stuff that makes you feel like it, because I think it's so important that the audience is comfortable with the performer and doesn't think that the performer is having a meltdown. Like, it's so
even though you may be.
and so often in Edinburgh you'll do a show and you'll be like, they hate this and I hate you, but you have to just act like you're having the best time, and then sometimes the show picks up and they kind of warm to you a bit. And whereas I think a lot of people, and I do see a lot of comics kind of take the piss out of the audience and be like, oh, you don't like me, when it's like, no, you've got to, your job is to make the audience have a nice time. Exactly, so even if they're not loving your jokes, you can at least present that you're having a good time, so then everyone is at least chill and their buttholes aren't so tense watching you. But honestly, the first one, Adam, my director, was just like, okay, so you can't do that again. Yes, I know. So then the next time I took a lot of gin, and I basically was drunk the next time I did it. And then that just got me through. But I don't do that anymore. I can't have a drink beforehand now. I have to be very honest.
So, do you have a way of remembering all your routines and stories?
Well, as I've said, no.
You don't have any notes or anything on your hands or anything like that?
Well, when I'm doing work in progress, or when I'm doing a preview, or anything that isn't like, like a Soho Theatre show or an Edinburgh show, I will have sometimes I used to have like a script, basically, because I think it's very cool when like comedians have like a notepad, and I've always been fascinated by it. When they're chatting, and then they'll just like wander over and just look at the notepad, and then come back, and you're like, no, but I need to read the whole. I've formulated the whole joke, literally, even the bits that I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, how have you? So I've never been able to do that. So I basically have a script. I have a script throughout the whole of the preview thing. But what's been nice is as I've got more comfortable, of course, I then do the thing where I'm like, I realise I've not really looked at it for a long time. And I'm like, I'm like one of those comedians. I'm like one of those ones that don't look at the script. Whereas my first previews in 2018, I was like, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So bad. But yeah, so I do that and I don't kind of put pressure on myself. And I've realised the more pressure you put on yourself and the more you tell yourself you can't learn lines and you will forget it, you'll just forget it. And like I said right at the start, like the moment I realised when I drop a line, it's not the end of the world, like it's absolutely fine. That kind of puts you in a nice place. And also as well, I do shows where there is projector and lighting changes and it's not just me and a mic. So sometimes that kind of helps. So there's been times where I've been like, I finished something and been like, I have no idea. Oh, that green light's happened. So now I know it's this song. And so I can like move into it. So I kind of do those things to help me. And also I have jokes and things that I can do that makes it look like I haven't forgotten the lines. Like I did, my show Hot Content is about basically I pretend I sort of tell the audience I'm going to teach them about how to be very good at social media and very healthy with their phones, but I'm terrible. So I just made it so that when I forgot my lines, that was because I'm like a phone mad obsessed and my attention span's gone, when actually I literally had just forgotten the lines because I was quite tired. So that sort of thing helps. But also I think I read like a lot of my friends are like actors, like straight actors, and it's really helped me to speak to them, and they say basically there's no like fun, easy, quick way of learning lines. You just have to say them, cover them, check them, say them. So I just spend like the 3 days before a show just going through, then walking around my house. And there was this lovely time last year when I was rehearsing for my Soho run in March, just before the pandemic hit, and I in 2020, sorry, and I walking around my flat doing my lines, and I looked across and there was a flat with a little girl and she was just copying all my movements.
Oh, that's
walking around and I was so embarrassed. I like ran and hid in the bathroom, but it was very nice.
That's wonderful, isn't it? That's brilliant. So you found at least one great fan. Well, two.
One big fan, yeah. 2-year-old and you, yeah.
You've appeared in many comic roles on TV and radio, including Breeders for Sky One, Russell Howard's Good News for BBC Three, and the brilliant sitcom Damned for Channel 4.
Yes.
On radio, you've appeared in Sketchorama, amongst others. Are there any differences, do you think, appearing on TV or radio as opposed to live stand-up?
Well, I think on TV and radio, I've only ever had 20 seconds on camera. So I think that's the main difference.
So there is.
Yeah, I'm in, I'm out. I'm all 20 seconds. Steve, come in, say a joke, then I leave. I think there is massive differences.
Right.
I've not had huge big, because I'm not really an actor. I mean, it says that I am on my blurb, but I don't really. I like to, and I do bits and bobs, but it's kind of, so I find that whenever I do something like that, it's really fun. And what's so nice about it is that if you fuck it up, you can do it again. So nice. And also there's so many nice things that so I did Rose Matafeo's show, Starstruck.
Oh, she's brilliant. I love that. Yeah,
she's my favourite. And it was one scene, and it was one of those things where it was like, do the script and then just have a little improv, and that's my fave, because then we've got the jokes that you want, and then you can just have fun. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No one sees it. Whereas obviously with live, the audience are watching every single thing you do. So every body language thing, hang on. I thought it was a dog, but it's not. And it's okay. I was like, the dog's ripped something off and he's eaten the wall. I mean, it's just fine. But yeah, so every single kind of, basically there's the first sort of 5 minutes, or to be honest, actually the first sort of 30 seconds of walking out onto the stage, humans make assessments and they make judgments on whether they think that they'll like you or whatever. And then you then have to either kind of, work harder to get them, or they already like you, so it's fine, but then you lose them. Whereas with stuff on camera, it's kind of out of your control. You do what you do, and then they'll edit it in a way we would hope makes it funnier, and also you get loads of go. So it's very tiring, and it also takes so long to do I only do sort of one scene or something. I sort of pop up.
I remember you in it though. definitely.
Yes,
Yeah.
the best bit of it.
I knew there was something else, and I thought, what else?
Oh, it's fine. But that one scene obviously takes like a day. You're like, how? But that is the way it is. And I find doing film stuff like so fun, and so it's really, really fun. But it's much more difficult to get into. Whereas when you do live show, you've got full control, and it's your thing, and you decide what goes in. So that's also quite nice. Basically, they're both fun and both scary in equal measures.
To date, what has been your comedy highlight? In other words, was there a point where you thought to yourself, yes, this is going really well, I can make a career out of this, considering all that you've said in the past?
Absolutely, yeah, no. Yes, I'm very self-deprecating. Look, I will say that, so I started doing these online sketches in 2020 and then sort of going over into 2021. And like, look, Stephen Fry retweeted it and said, this, like, you've got to love that, haven't you? Like,
Fantastic.
That's got to be, that was great. Stephen Fry and James Corden and Dawn French. And there's a couple of moments where I've just been like, and to be honest, all it is I'm just like, Stephen Fry's watched my sketch. Like, Dawn French has seen me do a thing. I love that. And it doesn't really, it's not really going to do anything. It's not going to make me, next stop Hollywood. But it is like, it's just quite a nice thing. But where you go, I've done something that someone that I really respect really likes. And I think there's not very many quantifiable wins in the comedy industry. So you've got to take them where you can get them. And that's mine.
No, that's a lovely answer. And do you have any ambitions as a comedian? Would you like to be on TV? Would you like to play the O2? Would you like your own quiz show?
No ambitions at all. No. None, thank you. None for me. No, what would I like? I'm sort of because I do quite a lot of things. So like I'm writing a book at the moment. So like, I kind of would like people to like the book. I think I would like to write, because I've always kind of wanted to, but you sort of feel embarrassed saying it when it doesn't happen. I'd like to write a sitcom or something and have a nice little part in it. There we go. Or, I mean, obviously my dream is a sketch show, but no one really wants that apparently. But I've been trying for a long time. But I think it's something. But also as well, like what I'm starting to realise, which is quite nice, is all the things that you think you want when you're younger, it's sort of the landscape has changed. So TV's great, and I would love a thing on TV, but also it's just as good to do something fun online. Like it's just, it doesn't really, there's what is a successful thing. So my ambition, I think, is to just keep making things, to not give up, and to find to keep finding like joy in just doing little things and kind of trucking along, rather than I think be like, I must be in Hollywood, otherwise I will never be satisfied. Because actually I probably would hate it and it's too hot.
That's a great answer. Just a great answer. It's so good to hear. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
Oh God, yes. I saw this one and I was like, I've got to prep this before, because I always go, I don't know any. It's like, yes, you do. And like when I did my like Oxford University interview, and they were like, what books have you read? And I was interviewing to be English literature, and I said, I've not read any books. That's literally what I said. I panicked. I didn't get in. Okay, so. Well, when I was growing up, I just loved the shows that everybody says. It's like The Fast Show and Big Train and Smack the Pony. And Anchorman was like I watched that like 17,000, Airplane, like those films. Like I just basically films with Police Academy, like films and TV shows that have like an astonishingly high joke rate. That's what I like. I just like jokes. I've very recently, actually today, just watched Auntie Donna's comedian. And that's my thing, and it's so different to so much stuff you see on over here, because it's just like, oh, they are committing to some jokes.
Yeah.
They are big and silly and fun. And I laughed so much watching. I've only seen the first episode, but oh my God, I loved it. So I love Auntie Donna. I saw them live a few years ago and they were amazing, but I just presumed that their Netflix series would be like them, but like someone had gone like, oh, but can you be a bit less like mental? But actually, no, go even more crazy. I love it. So Auntie Donna are great. Comedians I really like. So who do I like? Let's actually think. Obviously, I really like James Acaster and like Nish Kumar and like all my faves, because it's so nice because they're just, you know, I've sort of known them for a long time, and you see them just be brilliant on a massive stage now, and it's just, I get chills. Other comedians that I really love I love like the online stuff that Alistair Beckett King does. I don't know if you've seen his online stuff.
I've seen him on a Bygone News for You recently. He's been top quality.
He's been on loads of stuff, and that's really cool. There's a guy who I really like who does this kind of really cool stuff on Twitch called Bill Al-Zafar, and he plays like a football coach, but he's just so creative, and he's just like doing things that are a little bit different and a little bit like wow, it's so innovative and exciting. But and then okay, now I've got to say a woman, haven't I? Come on. Also, I know loads of amazing. Oh my God, one of my favourite stand-ups is Gabby Best, and she's like a bit of a cult classic.
I know her well. Yeah, she's brilliant.
She's just so physical and brilliant, and also John Kearns as well. I think the thing is whenever I go and see pretty much any comedy show, I will find, even if like, so say it's a comedy show that maybe people would say like, oh, that's not good, for example, I will find something in it that I'm like, oh, but that was cool that they did that.
Me.
Like,
I always try and find the good in it. Because also it's easy to do that when you're watching someone give something, like just give something of themselves that is so intense. And there is always something, even if it's like, oh, that joke was actually really cool, or like, even if it's like the lighting was great, but you could never tell them that afterwards. I loved your lighting. That's not cool. But there's always something you take away from it. The lighting was brilliant. Everything else was shit. But there's always something, or something kind of inspires me, or makes me kind of go like, oh yes, I should keep going because that was cool that they didn't. Maybe I could do something like this. And it kind of So I think it's difficult for me to ever say like these 5 comedians I love, and that's why I kind of been giving you quite a nebulous answer, just because I think pretty much everything I watch, I always sort of appreciate it on a level, you know. I think that's the reason why the blog came about, because it is. I'm hoping it's going to be such a positive thing. I mean, the first comedian I ever saw was on holiday with my family. I would be 7. And it was Les Dawson at Scarborough, and he was just phenomenal. I can remember laughing at him at 7, and then a year later I saw Tommy Cooper, and I got the bug for it, and I've seen Ken Dodd and the 2 Ronnies and all the rest of it. The only one I never saw early on was Morecambe and Wise. I would have loved to have seen them, because they're the reason why I do it. There's something more when you twiddle your glasses or move your hat or something like that.
I love them so much.
Superb. And to see them on TV now, it's still funny. Into the 80s, it was French and Saunders. It was Alexis Sale. I saw Rick Mail in Carlisle. He was incredible. All the alternative comedians, and then of course into the 90s and the 2000s with the Edinburgh Fringe. So big supporter of the new comedians as well. You were saying about James Acaster. I think he's one of the best at the moment, and I have a testimonials page on my blog where a lot of the comedians have very kindly said very nice things. And James Acaster put, if I wasn't a comedian, I would happily sit next to Richard Gill all day and make him laugh.
That's so nice. Yeah.
So he is. He's brilliant. His last live show that was streamed.
Oh, it was incredible, wasn't it? I think it's like stand up.
The Lasagna one was superb. Absolutely superb.
He's a brilliant stand up, isn't he? Yeah.
Just following on from that, like me, do you tend to go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Yeah, I do. It depends on what sort of stage of my own work I'm in. So sometimes when I'm like writing, I go and see loads of stuff, because and it's not that I'm nicking stuff, but I get inspired by people doing stuff, even if it's got nothing to do with anything I'm doing, and often it doesn't. It's just really nice to go and see someone and see what they've made, and then you go, I could make something as well. Like, you know, and I think that's, you know, a lot of it helps me with the fear, basically. Because also either you go and you see something and you think it's incredible and you're inspired by it, or you go and you go like, okay, well, that wasn't really my thing. So there's no reason, but lots of other people were laughing at it. So there's no reason why I can't do something, because it's so subjective, isn't it? And like, well, that's what's lovely about comedy.
Exactly.
So I always find something. So I go and see a lot when I'm writing. When I'm performing at Edinburgh, particularly, I don't, because I find Edinburgh and the intensity of the scrutiny that you put under and the reviews and all that stuff, I find it very difficult to be sort of psychologically stable.
Right.
So I basically just...
That's totally understandable.
Yeah, I can't really, and it's just that I can't just sit and just... I'm always like, oh, that's a good venue. Maybe I should do this venue. Maybe that's a bigger venue than mine is. Maybe you're like, what are you doing? I don't like that person. You don't want to be that person. So I always then go and see all everyone's Soho runs or alternative runs if they do them in like London.
Yeah.
And then after I've done a big sort of, you know, an Edinburgh show or a run, I kind of have a break, because it kind of feels like work. So I have a little break, and then I fall in love with it again. So for example, like now it's, you know, it's been so long since I've seen anything. I'm absolutely desperate to go, and I'm just going to go and see everything at the Soho and everything at Pleasance and everything. And I'm just going to go and to North Down and Bill Murray and like all of them little venues around London, because I don't really travel outside of London, sadly. But like, and I think it's because that's the reason why I do comedy, is because I love going to see comedy, and
that's brilliant. That's why I do this.
Yeah,
you know,
you can forget sometimes if you're doing it.
There is something special about the art of it, because it's just such a joyous thing. You know, what is not to love? You know?
It is, yeah, and you can get bogged down in the. It's like if you do anything and you see the same thing, you can see the joins, and you can go like, oh, that punchline was interesting, but actually I would, you know, and you're like, what? So you have to kind of make sure that you stay just being like, this is a show and I'm having a nice time. Come on, and I'm glad that I'm still able to do that.
That's lovely. Last year, 2020. Was a very weird, strange year for everybody. How have you found online gigs? You said before you've done a few online sketch shows as opposed to live ones. And what do you think the future is for live comedy?
Oh, big question. Well, I didn't do any online gigs because I was like, oh no, what? I don't understand that. I did one, and it was Stu Goldsmith.
He's great. Yeah.
He's great, and he had he basically interviewed me, and I did like a character that I was doing anyway on because I did this like weekly show on Twitch, which is like a weird platform, throughout the lockdown, so that I could just do something. And it was like an improvised book club where like we made the book up and then we like talked about the book as if it was real, and it was very fun. So I just did that on his show, but there was like Zoom, and so then there was an audience, you could hear people laughing, and it was actually really nice. But the whole time, that was right at the end basically of lockdown, the whole time I've been like, oh no, it'd be awful, and it was actually really nice. I wish I'd done more, but I just did online sketches. That's what I did. So I basically would put stuff out. And I found that really nice, because I suppose the control freak in me, you've got complete control. You don't see people going like, that's boring, I'm going to skip through that. Whereas on the stage, you see people, like I can always zone in on the one person who's not laughing. You're like, why? Like, I don't need that. So actually doing online stuff, you just put it out, you don't look at it, fine. And you can kind of go, look, that amount of people enjoyed it, so that's fine. And so I think, so I kind of concentrated on that, and I really did enjoy that for a bit, but then now I am both scared but very much excited to go back into the environment where it's like anything could happen. It's happening right now, we're in the room. Like, I think there's nothing, and even no matter what happens with online comedy, and I think the problem with online comedy is that I think monetizing it is very difficult, and it's not really sustainable for comedians, really. I think it leads to something else maybe, rather than it is in and of itself an aim, especially with TikTok and stuff like that, where it's so disposable. But I think it will be like, how the book, everyone was like, books will die, and then actually because we need a respite from our screens, reading books and long form stuff is actually, we kind of crave it. I think that'll be like that with live. I think there will always be a place to go into a room and just have stuff happen that will never happen again. And I don't think you can ever recreate that feeling online.
I totally
agree.
Might
change. It might change, and it might be more difficult to come up as a live comic. You might have to do both in order to be successful. I don't know, but like, I think that it will always, I think, you know, it's like, why aren't plays dead yet? That doesn't make any sense, but people want to see plays because they want to get off their phones. So we might all, I think we'll always have live comedy in some capacity, I think.
I totally agree. I mean, from my point of view, I've been to a lot of online comedy, and if it hadn't have been there, I don't know how I'd have got through lockdown, because I was just sitting here doing nothing. And but when it first started, there was no audio at all. So I would be sitting here laughing at four walls, and literally I thought I was going to be taken away because I've got such a loud laugh. But when they opened up the audio, the comedians who did it, they could time the jokes because they could hear that they had like a virtual front row. So
the audience,
so they could time the jokes, they could chat to the audience. And I would go on a Monday night to Sean James's Happy Mondays gig. I'd go to Always Be Comedy. I'd go to Boothby Graffoe, was a favourite of mine. He does live ones. And on a Friday, I'd go to Jarlath Regan's Irish show, and they were all really very well done. But you cannot beat live. I've just started to go back to live gigs, and I love to go out on a Saturday night and have a few drinks or a meal and then just sit there, and like you say, it is in the moment. You just have no idea what is going to happen, but you just sit there and you say, right, entertain me, and it's the best feeling in the world. It really is. So thank you very, very much for all that you do, because it is wonderful to sit and watch. Just before we go, and I could talk to you all night, I've really enjoyed it. It's been an absolute
Me too.
Is there anything else you would like to say? Have you got any gigs coming up? Have you got any?
Well, it's next year. This is coming out, isn't it?
Well, I may jiggle them around a bit. I don't know.
Sure. Well, I'll say what I've got coming up, and then you can always edit it thing. So I'm doing my first sort of hour-long live thing since March 2020 at the end of July. So I'm doing my show Hot Content at the Soho Theatre for 2 nights. It's socially distanced in the downstairs. That'll be really fun. I think there's still tickets left. And then also I have a podcast called Nobody Panic, which is a lot of fun, where we basically, like, me and my friend Tessa, who I used to be in a sketch group with, we basically like try and solve like how-tos to try and help your life, but in a kind of fun way. And I suppose just, you know, follow me on social media, and then you'll see the things I'm doing, I guess.
What's your social media hook?
Yes, so I'm at Stevie M, but the S is a 5, and I regret it a lot, but I can't change it. That's the same on Instagram and Twitter. If you go on there, I guess you'll get a better idea of what I'm doing, or what I'm not doing. Quite frankly, maybe I'm just chilling out.
Well, I am delighted that you're gigging again in July, and I, for one, am going to get a ticket and come and see you. So I'll
forget my line, and then I'll salute you,
because you are terrific at what you do. You've made me laugh such a lot, and you've been a fantastic guest today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too. It's been absolutely lovely.
All the best to you. Thanks now.
See you.